I was 13. My family had just moved to a small town in northern Alberta, and I was starting grade 8 at a new school that fall. So this house down there is the house that I lived in when I was first paralyzed. I was a fairly outgoing kid, so by the time winter rolled around, I had a large group of friends. And a typical teenager, I also managed to find a boy I liked named Thomas. On December 2nd, some of the boys in grade 9 talked about going snowmobiling after school. Blake, Brandon, and Corey were the boys that had the snowmobiles. I had become friends with them and had gone snowmobiling with Blake once before. Blake was best friends with Brandon, and they were this larger-than-life duo that was always making jokes and laughing. Blake had a TV in his room, I remember, and I always wanted to be at his house because it felt so grown up to be able to hang out in his room with a bit of privacy. On this particular day, Blake invited me to go snowmobiling again, and I was determined to go because I had heard that Thomas got invited to go too. I didn't want to be the only girl going, so I asked my friend Candace if she would come with me. By the end of the day, 6 of us had a plan to go snowmobiling. Brandon Whittleton, Blake Madden, Corey Wald, Thomas Irving, Candace Reed, and me. I went home after school and asked my mom if I could go snowmobiling, and of course, she said no. I spent the next hour doing my best to wear her down, begging her to let me go. I told her that snowmobiling, or sledding as the boys referred to it, was a perfectly normal activity for 14-year-old boys in small towns in northern Alberta. I also told her that I had to go in order to make friends, and that she was ruining my life if she didn't let me go. I said all the things that 13-year-old me could think of that might convince her to let me go. Normally, my mom was pretty tough, so I wouldn't have had a chance, but she had just had a tooth pulled and was on some painkillers that made her super sick, so she was at a disadvantage. Finally, she caved and said that I could go as long as we stayed near the drainage ditch, which was a spot just on the edge of town that was close to houses and really flat. When I met my friends at the drainage ditch, everyone decided that instead of snowmobiling there, we were going to go out to Brandon's, who lived on a farm 15 kilometers away. And the plan was to snowmobile there, in the ditches along the highway. This was definitely not what I had agreed to with my mom, and I knew that she probably wouldn't want me to go, but I was 13 and with the boy I liked, so I made the most logical decision I could think of. Just pretend I was allowed to go and hope nothing happened. So we snowmobiled out to Brandon's house, and when we got there, we stopped for a minute to rest. I switched snowmobiles and gave my helmet to Candace because we were short one. I hopped on with Blake and we took off into the hills around Brandon's house at around 4 p.m. One thing I vividly remember was feeling scared, like I was on a roller coaster. I remember holding Blake so tight and squeezing my legs around the seat of the snowmobile. I hadn't gone snowmobiling very often, and certainly not without any adults, so I was really nervous. I remember thinking I couldn't wait for it to be over and just get back to town. After we'd been snowmobiling for a while, it was starting to get dark and everyone had to be home soon, so we started back to Brandon's house. Brandon, Thomas, Corey, and Candace went ahead of me and Blake, and when they made it to the fence line, they stopped to wait for us. They waited and waited some more, but we didn't come. They all got worried and turned back to look for us. Brandon knew this area pretty well, so when they didn't find us right away, he knew something was wrong. They decided to turn off their snowmobiles so that they could try to hear Blake and I, and when they did, they didn't hear anything. Finally, when Brandon was walking around, he saw a glimpse of something at the bottom of one of the hills. He went to check it out, and it was us. When they found us, the snowmobile was upside down on top of me and Blake. Because I wasn't wearing a helmet and my face had hit Blake's helmet, my nose was bleeding and my eyes were black. I was conscious but not coherent, and I was saying that I couldn't feel my legs. Corey went to get help, and the rest of the group stayed back at the hill with Blake and I. For what seemed like hours while they waited for help, my friends tried to keep me warm and alive and watched as Blake faded away. When the ambulance finally arrived, Corey and Brandon had to bring the first responders to the accident site on their snowmobiles until a crew of local men showed up to help. Blake died that night. I fractured my spine, I had a hairline fracture in my skull and my eye socket, and a tear in my aorta. I woke up 2 weeks later in the hospital to learn that I was paralyzed from the chest down and that I would never walk again. The day I realized my life would never be the same was when a physio came into my hospital room to exercise my legs. This was the first time that I can remember being awake during the exercises, and when she lifted my leg out of the covers, I finally saw that the feeling that I thought I still had in my legs was only phantom sensation. Now, I really understood what the doctors meant when they said that I would never walk again. I spent the next 4 months in the hospital. Thomas called me nearly every day. When I got home, life kept going. For Candace, for Thomas, for Corey, for Brandon, and even for Blake's parents. Thomas and I dated for 7 years, but I lost touch with everyone else that was at the accident. And for years, I thought that didn't matter. Until I got sick of telling the story of that night. A story that wasn't really mine and in which I was sick of being the hero. A story that I didn't actually know. And so I went back to the place and back to the people. And while I went back for answers, what I found was friendship. Friends who hadn't forgotten the accident, friends who hadn't forgotten Blake, and friends who hadn't forgotten me.
Wow, we come off right down that way through the trail out right there. Yeah, up through that farm. I wouldn't recognize that. I thought there was more trees right here. No, 100%. Yeah, this is where it was lost in 20 years. Yeah. The first guy I found brought him back. Yeah, and I told his wife, like, call 911. Help, right? I just knew that he had to get to the closest phone. I was like, no cell phone back then, obviously. So
Did you
it was
know
like,
what the closest house was, Corey? Or
we said that there. Well, we knew there was a house back there, or even Brandon's house, or
yeah, well,
third time back, I went. He's like, "Are you in your canoe?" And he went, so I waited for the cop car.
that's right, I remember that.
And I found closure and gratitude. Brittany, what are you feeling right now? I don't even know. I'm feeling lucky to be alive, I guess. Yeah. I will never really know what happened that day, how we crashed, or why. What I do know is that I made it out alive, and that Blake's parents probably wish every day that they could watch their son have the experiences that I've been so lucky to have over the past 20 years. This life, wheelchair included, is precious, and I will live it to the fullest. And every once in a while, when I forget, Blake is my angel, reminding me that I was the lucky one.